My son-in-law didn't come to my daughter's funeral. 3 hours later, he posted a photo on Facebook, smiling on a boat in Key West, beer in hand, arms around a woman I'd never seen before. The caption said, "Life is short. Live it." I was still standing in the cemetery when my granddaughter showed me the screen. She was 9 years old. She looked up at me with a mother's eyes and asked, "Is that Daddy?" I didn't answer. I put my arm around her and walked her to the car, and I didn't say a word the entire drive home. But inside, something shifted. Something that had been grief hardened into something else entirely. My daughter's name was Abigail. Abby. She was 41 years old when she died of what the doctors called acute liver failure. It came fast, faster than any of us expected. 6 weeks from diagnosis to the end. I drove from Raleigh to Charlotte every single weekend those last 2 months. I sat beside her bed. I held her hand when she was too tired to talk. I read her the crossword clues from the newspaper because she always loved puzzles, even when she couldn't answer them anymore. Her husband, I'll call him my son-in-law because I refuse to use his name. He came to the hospital twice in 6 weeks. He said he had work obligations. He said the drive was hard on him. He said a lot of things. Abby never complained about it. That was who she was. She made excuses for him even from her hospital bed. "He's under a lot of pressure, Dad. You know how he gets." I did know. I'd known for years. But she loved him, so I kept my mouth shut. At the funeral, her absence was the thing everyone noticed, but no one said out loud. Abby's friends from college were there, her book club, her neighbors, her co-workers who drove 3 hours in the rain. Her husband was not. His mother showed up alone and sat in the back row and didn't make eye contact with anyone. I gave the eulogy. I talked about the time Abby was 7 and convinced me that our backyard needed a weather station. So we spent an entire Saturday building a little wooden box with a thermometer and a rain gauge out of a mason jar. She kept records in a spiral notebook for 2 years. That was Abby. Meticulous, curious, completely devoted to whatever she cared about. I got through it. I don't know how, but I got through it. Afterward, I was standing by the cars with my granddaughter Maya and my son's wife when Maya tugged my sleeve and handed me her tablet. She'd been on it quietly, the way kids are. I assumed she was watching something. Instead, she was showing me her father's Facebook page. The photo had been posted 47 minutes earlier. Key West. Sunshine. A marina behind him, boats bobbing in the blue water. His arm around a woman in a yellow sundress, both of them laughing at something off camera. He looked relaxed in a way I had never once seen him look in the 15 years he was married to my daughter. Life is short. Live it. Maya was looking at me. "Is that Daddy?" "I don't know, sweetheart," I said. "Why don't you go get some of that lemonade Aunt Sheila brought?" She went. I stood there with my phone now out, screenshot already taken, and I thought about my daughter in that hospital bed telling me he was under a lot of pressure. I drove home on autopilot. I remember the highway. I remember the radio playing something I immediately turned off. I remember pulling into my driveway and just sitting in the car for a while, staring at the garage door. Inside, on the kitchen table, was an envelope I hadn't noticed before I left that morning. It had been slipped under the front door sometime in the last few days. I'd been so consumed with the funeral arrangements that I hadn't even looked at the mail pile in almost a week. My name was on the front in my daughter's handwriting. I sat down at the table and I held it for a long time before I opened it. There were 2 things inside. A letter, handwritten, 4 pages front and back, and a USB drive, small and blue, the kind you buy in a 3-pack at a drugstore. The letter started, "Dad, if you're reading this, I didn't make it. I'm so sorry. I hate that you're sitting there right now." I had to put it down after that. I went to the kitchen, made coffee. I didn't drink, and stood at the window looking at the oak tree in the backyard for about 10 minutes. Then I went back and I read the whole thing. Abby had known she was in trouble with her marriage for a long time. Not trouble like arguments or growing apart. Trouble like something darker, something she'd been too ashamed to say out loud to anyone. She found things. Bank statements that didn't line up, a second phone she wasn't supposed to know about, emails she stumbled across when his laptop was open on the kitchen counter and he'd forgotten to close the browser. He had been moving money. Their money. Money from the joint accounts. Money from the sale of a rental property they'd owned together. Money her mother had left her when she passed. He'd been moving it for over 2 years into accounts she didn't have access to. She didn't know how much. She was afraid to look too carefully because she didn't know what he'd do if he found out she knew. She'd started keeping records. Everything she found she put on that USB drive. Screenshots, PDFs, notes with dates and amounts. She said she'd reached out quietly to an attorney, a woman named Deborah who worked out of an office near her work and had started the process of understanding her options. But then she got sick, and everything went sideways. "I don't know what he'll do when I'm gone," she wrote. "I don't know if he'll fight you for Maya. I don't know if he'll try to get to the life insurance before anyone realizes the policy is through my work. HR has the details. Please check it, Dad. Please make sure Maya is protected." She designated Maya as the sole beneficiary on the policy 18 months ago, with me as the trustee until Maya turns 25. She'd done it quietly, during a routine HR update, without mentioning it to him. She asked me to find Deborah. She gave me the address. And, at the very end of the letter, in smaller handwriting, like she'd added it after she thought she was done, "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was embarrassed. You always said he wasn't right for me, and I wanted so badly to prove that I'd made a good choice. I love you, Dad. Please take care of my girl." I sat at that kitchen table for a long time. Then I called my son. He lives in Asheville, 3 hours west, and he picked up on the second ring. I told him I needed him to come. He said he'd be there by 9. While I waited, I plugged in the USB drive. Abby had been thorough in the way she was thorough about everything, the same way she kept that weather notebook at 7 years old. The files were organized by date, labeled clearly. Wire transfers, account numbers, a spreadsheet she'd built herself tracking every withdrawal she could find, a folder of photos, screenshots from his second phone, which she'd photographed carefully while he was in the shower one morning. The woman in the Key West photo was in some of those screenshots. By the time my son's headlights swept across the front window, I had a pretty clear picture of what had been happening. We sat at the table together and I showed him everything. He's steadier than me, always has been. But I saw his jaw tighten when he saw the numbers. Nearly $240,000 moved across various accounts over 26 months. "We need Deborah," he said. "I know. Tonight's too late to call. First thing tomorrow." We made a plan. My son stayed the night. We didn't sleep much. In the morning, we drove together to the address Abby had written down. The office was on the second floor of a brick building near the hospital where Abby had worked. The door said Deborah Finch, Family Law. She remembered Abby immediately. She was a small woman, maybe 60, with reading glasses on a chain around her neck and the kind of calm that told you she'd sat with a lot of people in hard moments. She said Abby had come to see her 4 times before the diagnosis. She said Abby had been building toward filing for divorce. She said there was enough, even at that point, to make a strong case. "Now it's a different situation," she said carefully. "But the documentation your daughter collected, combined with what you've already found, that's meaningful, especially regarding Maya." She explained what I didn't know, that in North Carolina, a surviving spouse has certain automatic rights, but that Abby had taken specific legal steps to separate key assets before her death. The life insurance was clean, properly designated, legally airtight. The joint accounts were murkier, but the wire transfer records Abby had kept were exactly the kind of evidence that could support a fraud claim. Deborah connected us with a colleague who handled estate litigation. Within 2 weeks, we had a formal complaint filed with the state insurance commissioner and a civil suit in process related to the fraudulent transfers. He hired an attorney, of course. He called me twice during that period, the first time to tell me how sorry he was, the second time to tell me his lawyer had advised him not to contact me anymore. I didn't return either call. What I didn't expect was Maya. He had physical custody for those weeks, according to their informal arrangement. She'd been staying at the house, going to school, trying to hold her routine together. But 10 days after the funeral, he dropped her off at my house with a duffel bag and said he needed some space to process his grief. He said he'd call to arrange a schedule. He didn't call. Maya's teacher called me instead to check in. Maya's soccer coach called. Maya's best friend's mother called to say Maya had been crying at practice. I enrolled her in my school district. I bought her a new backpack, the kind with the stars on it she'd pointed at in the store, and then said, "Never mind, because it was too expensive." I told her it wasn't too expensive. I told her she could have the stars. She slept in Abby's old room, which I'd kept mostly the same for years. The first night she came and knocked on my bedroom door at 2 in the morning and asked if she could leave the hall light on. "You can leave every light in the house on if you want," I said. She almost smiled. Almost. The legal process took longer than I wanted and moved faster than I expected in some ways. His attorney tried to argue that the wire transfers were legitimate investment decisions made with Abby's knowledge. Deborah's colleague dismantled that argument with the records Abby had kept, including a note in her own handwriting, dated, describing the moment she found the first transfer and confirmed she had not authorized it. The insurance company processed Maya's claim without issue. The fraud investigation by the state took 11 months, but at the end of it there was a settlement. I won't give the full number because it's still partly in litigation, but I will say that Abby's daughter will not have to worry about college. He did not contest the informal custody arrangement. His attorney communicated that he was not in a position to provide a stable home environment at this time. His mother called me once to apologize. It was a short call. I thanked her, and we left it there. The Facebook post, the one Maya showed me at the cemetery, was deleted sometime in those first 2 weeks. But screenshots live forever, and Abby's attorney had already preserved it as part of the broader picture of his conduct. One evening in late October, about 4 months after the funeral, Maya and I were sitting on the back porch after dinner. She'd started doing better at school. She'd started talking more. She still had hard nights, and I suspected she would for a long time. But she was eating, she was laughing sometimes. She was herself in glimpses. She was looking at the oak tree in the backyard, the same one I'd stared at the night I read Abby's letter. "Grandpa," she said, "did Mom know she was going to die?" I thought about that for a moment. "She knew she might," I said, "and she made sure you were going to be okay." Maya was quiet for a while. "How?" "She planned," I said. "She was careful. She kept records. She asked me to help." I looked at my granddaughter, Abby's eyes looking back at me. "She was thinking about you the whole time." Maya pulled her knees up to her chest. She was always like that. "Yeah," I said, "she really was." We sat there until the fireflies came out, which in North Carolina in October means it was later than either of us realized. I told Maya it was time for bed. She said 5 more minutes. I gave her 10. That night, after she was asleep and the house was quiet, I went to the kitchen and stood at the window and looked at the oak tree in the dark. I thought about a 7-year-old with a spiral notebook and a mason jar rain gauge and 32 consecutive days of weather data recorded in careful, even handwriting. I thought about how she apologized in that letter for not telling me sooner. She didn't have anything to apologize for, not a single thing. But she was Abby, so of course she did. I'd kept the letter in the desk drawer in my study. I'd read it more times than I could count. Some nights I couldn't look at it. Some nights it was the only thing that made me feel like she was still in the room. She had done everything she could for Maya. She had done it while she was sick, while she was scared, while she was pretending to her husband that she didn't know anything, while she was sitting in a hospital bed letting me read her crossword clues she couldn't answer anymore. That's who my daughter was. And because of who she was, her little girl has stars on her backpack and the hall light on every night and a college fund that nobody can touch. I'd call that a win. I'd call that Abby. I keep thinking about the mason jar rain gauge, about a 7-year-old with a spiral notebook who recorded the weather every single day for 2 years because she said she wanted to understand patterns. That was Abby. That was who she was long before any of this happened. Careful, methodical, paying attention when no one else thought it mattered. And in the end, that same quality is what protected her daughter. I don't think life is as random as it feels when you're standing at a cemetery watching your child get buried. I think the choices people make quietly, consistently, over years, eventually become the story. His choices and her choices were both accumulating the whole time. He was moving money and covering his tracks and telling himself he was getting away with something. She was documenting, consulting an attorney, designating beneficiaries and writing a letter she hoped I'd never have to read. Both of them building towards something. Only one of them was building something that would last. That's the thing I've had to sit with. Not justice, exactly, though there was some of that. More like the recognition that who you are in the ordinary moments is who you are when it counts. Abby didn't become careful and thorough when she found out she was sick. She already was. She'd always been. She just applied it to the hardest situation she'd ever faced. And she did it without anyone knowing, without falling apart, without letting Maya see her afraid. I think about what that required. Not just the practical intelligence to know which documents to save and how to find a family law attorney and how to quietly change a beneficiary form during a routine HR update. Those things mattered. They saved Maya's future, but underneath all of it was something harder to name, a kind of moral backbone. Abby knew what was right and she moved toward it even when it would have been easier to look away, to not know, to let it go and just focus on getting through her illness. She didn't look away, she looked straight at it, and she did something about it. And then she asked for help. That part stays with me too. She spent so long trying to handle it alone, trying to protect everyone from the weight of it. And then she wrote that letter and said, "I need you, Dad. Please take care of my girl." That took its own kind of strength. The kind that's harder than toughing it out alone, knowing when to reach out, knowing that strength doesn't mean silence. Maya starts 5th grade in the fall. She picked her backpack herself, the one with the stars. She's been sleeping with the hall light on since the night she moved in, and I've stopped thinking of it as something temporary to manage, and started thinking of it as just how we live now. Some nights she's quiet, some nights she wants to talk about her mom. I let her lead. I don't know what the next few years will look like. I know there will be hard days. I know there are things I can't fix for her, but I also know she comes from a woman who kept records when she was frightened, who thought about her daughter's college fund while she was sitting in a hospital bed, who apologized in her final letter for not asking for help sooner. Maya has that in her. She already does. I see it in the way she pays attention, in the way she asked me, quietly and seriously, why her dad wasn't at the funeral. She deserves the truth in pieces at the right time. And she'll handle it. I'm sure of that. That's the only thing I'm sure of right now, and it's enough.